Ever been in that tough spot, wondering if you should fight for a relationship or just walk away? Yeah, it's a question for the ages. But luckily, we've got some guidance today from Chapter 7, when to hold on and when to walk away.
And it's a chapter that really digs into this dilemma, not with easy answers, but with compassion, trying to help us figure out our own path.
Totally. And it starts with this story, right? It's 1789 on the Forgotten Coast. And this woman, Isabel, finds a letter. It's from her husband, hidden under his pillow.
Oh, that's got to be a heart stopper. What's he saying?
Well, it's full of his doubts, his feelings about their life, their love. Like, is it enough? Really makes you think.
It does. I mean, that's what the whole chapter's about, right? How do we know when to hold on or when to let go in our own relationships?
Exactly. And it's not about judging anyone else's choices, right? It's about each of us figuring out what's right for our own situation.
Absolutely. Every relationship is unique. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. So the chapter gives us some things to think about, a framework, not a rule book.
I like that. So what's the first sign a relationship might be worth saving?
It starts with willingness to work on things, but here's the key. It's got to be from both partners.
Both. Not just one person doing all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. It's like you're in this together, right? If only one person's putting in the effort, it's not going to work. It takes two to tango, as they say.
Makes sense. So what's the next sign?
Respect and love. And I know what you're thinking. Those should go without saying, right? But the chapter digs deeper. It's about having that respect and love even when things are tough, even when you disagree.
It's not about never fighting.
No, not at all. It's about how you handle those disagreements. Do you still respect each other even when you're angry?
That foundation has to be strong, or else.
Or else the whole thing crumbles. Even if things look perfect on the surface, without that foundation, any little storm could be the end.
Okay, that's two signs. What's the third?
Being able to see a future together.
You mean like literally picturing the future? White picket fence and all that?
Well, not necessarily. It's more about shared values. Do you see the world in a similar way? Do you support each other's dreams, even if they're different?
Ah, okay, so it's not about having the exact same goals, but being on the same team.
You got it. And finally, the chapter talks about feeling safe and valued for who you are, like really yourself.
So you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not.
Exactly. You can let your guard down, be vulnerable, and know that your partner loves and accepts you for you, quirks and all.
That's so important. I mean, who wants to be with someone who's constantly trying to change them? So those are the four signs a relationship might be worth saving. But what about when it's time to walk away? When it's just not working?
That's the tough part, right? Knowing when to walk away. It's about recognizing that sometimes letting go is actually the healthier choice for both people.
It's about knowing when to hold on and when to let go, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be hard. So how do we know? What are the signs it might be time to walk away?
Well, the chapter starts by talking about when a relationship just brings more pain than joy. Like, yeah, all relationships have their ups and downs, but
Yeah.
it's about the overall balance.
So how do you know if it's just a rough patch or something more serious?
It's a good question. The chapter says to ask yourself, are you dreading spending time with this person? Do you feel drained and depleted after you're together?
That makes sense. And sometimes it's not even those big dramatic things, right? It's like things just slowly shift over time, which I guess is kind of like the next sign the chapter talks about, when your core values no longer align.
It's a big one. Values are so personal, so fundamental to who we are. And yeah, we all change and grow over time, but if you and your partner end up with totally different beliefs,
Different beliefs about what?
it could be anything. Family, work, how you see the world, those fundamental things. If you're not on the same page about those, it's going to be tough to make it work.
It's like you're speaking different languages, right?
Exactly. And the chapter really emphasizes that compromising on your core values, it usually ends up hurting both people in the long run. No one's truly happy.
So don't compromise who you are for a relationship, which actually kind of relates to the next sign the chapter brings up.
Yeah.
That whole losing yourself in the relationship thing.
Yeah, that slow fade. It can be so sneaky, One day you wake up and you're like, who am I? You've changed so much to please the other person that you've lost sight of yourself.
It's like looking in the mirror, not even recognizing who you see.
It's tough. It can really mess with your sense of self. And the chapter really emphasizes how important it is to reclaim that individuality. It's essential for our well-being, whether we're in a relationship or not.
So true. Okay, we've got one more sign to cover, right? It's being in a relationship out of fear.
This one can be hard to admit to, even to ourselves, because fear is powerful, right? It can keep us stuck in situations that aren't good for
And
us.
so what kind of fears are we talking about here?
Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of what other people will think, even fear of hurting the other person, even if we know deep down the relationship isn't right.
So it's like you're staying for all the wrong reasons.
Exactly. The chapter says that if we're feeling any of those fears, we have to really ask ourselves, why are we really in this relationship? Is it truly out of love?
It's about being honest with ourselves,
Mm,
about our motivations.
right. Because if it's not love, well, something needs to change.
Okay, so those are some heavy signs to look out for. But even when you know what to look for, even when you know it might be time to walk away,
Yeah.
actually making that decision, that's a whole other thing, right?
Oh, tell me about it. That's where things get really tricky. But the good news is this chapter gives us a tool to help with that. It's called the decision-making matrix.
Ooh, sounds official. What is that?
It's actually really simple. You get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. One side is reasons to stay, the other is reasons to leave.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
And then you just start listing things out. Be honest with yourself. Under reasons to stay, maybe you put something like, we have a lot of fun together, or he's really supportive of my career.
And then on the reasons to leave side, it can be stuff like, we fight constantly, or I don't feel respected.
You got it. And the key here is there's no judgment. Just write down whatever comes up. Don't overthink it. Just let those thoughts and feelings flow.
So it's about getting it all out there, on paper, seeing it in black and white.
Exactly. And as you're doing this, pay attention to how you feel. Does one side feel heavier than the other? Do certain items make you feel more emotional than others? Tap into that intuition.
Because sometimes our gut knows what's up even before our brain does.
Exactly. The decision-making matrix. It's not about making a decision based on a list. It's about gaining clarity.
It's a tool for self-discovery. It really can feel like a weight has been lifted when you finally make that decision. But then comes the doing, actually taking action.
Oh, absolutely. It's one thing to know what you want to do, but actually doing it, that takes courage.
So let's say someone's gone through that whole decision-making matrix and they've realized, yeah, this relationship is worth saving. What then? What does the chapter suggest for actually making things better?
Well, it talks about going all in,
Yeah.
really committing to making it work. And a big part of that is letting go of the past.
Easier said than done, right?
For sure. But holding on to those old hurts, those resentments, it's like poison. It just festers and grows, and eventually it chokes out all the good stuff.
Makes sense. So how do you actually do that? Let go of the past.
Well, it's not about forgetting, right? It's about choosing to move forward, to rebuild from a place of love and forgiveness.
So not dwelling on those old wounds, but focusing on healing them together.
Exactly. It takes effort from both sides, but it's possible. But let's say someone's done that decision-making matrix exercise and come to a different conclusion. Maybe for them, it's time to walk away. The chapter talks about how important it is to grieve.
To grieve the relationship.
Yeah, even when you know it's the right decision, even when it's a relief to finally let go, it's still a loss. You're saying goodbye to something, to someone you cared about.
To dreams you might have had, to a whole future you'd imagine.
It's tough, and the chapter really emphasizes how important it is to give yourself permission to feel all those feelings. Sadness, anger, disappointment, whatever comes up, don't judge yourself for it.
It's about being kind to yourself during that transition.
Yes, because here's the thing. On the other side of that grief, there's hope. There's the possibility of something new, something even better.
And that's exciting, isn't it? That chance to start fresh, to create a future that truly aligns with what you want.
Exactly. And that's something worth looking forward to.
It really is. And it makes me think about Isabel. We left her at a crossroads, holding that letter from her husband, facing that tough decision. And we never found out what she chose, did we? Did she stay and try to make it work? Or did she walk away to build a new life for herself?
It's a cliffhanger. But I think that's the point, isn't it? Because in a way, it's not about her decision, it's about ours.
It's about realizing we all face those crossroads in life, those moments when we have to dig deep and decide what we're willing to fight for, and when it's time to let go.
And sometimes, the bravest, most loving thing we can do is to listen to our own hearts and trust our own instincts, even when it's scary.
That's what it all comes down to, isn't it? That inner knowing. And on that note, that's our deep dive for today. We covered a lot, but I hope you walked away with some valuable tools and maybe even a little more hope for the future, whatever it may hold.